So we have a Boston group, and then we have from Birmingham, the Stadium Methodist Church, correct? Okay. So I'm glad we can have both of y'all together. Totally two opposite ends of the, or not the world, of the stage, I should say, it seems like. But I'm glad y'all could all be here today. It's nice too when, I like to call y'all newbies. We have a lot of people that have never been here before. It reminds me of how blessed I am to be here each and every day. So what I'm going to do is give you just a little bit of history, how this all came to be, a little bit about Mother Angelica, and then we're going to finish up with a walking tour. Now, everybody, I know y'all are familiar with Mother Angelica. Are most of y'all familiar with at least who Mother Angelica is? Yeah. Okay, especially you. Now, here's a picture of Mother Angelica with some of her nuns behind her, the Poor Clares of Perpetual Adoration. Then we have the shrine in the main church behind her, which you see right outside here at the windows. And then we have the satellite dishes, which represent EWTN, her television network. Now, Mother Angelica is actually originally from Canton, Ohio. Now, a lot of people wonder, why in the world did she choose Huntsville, Alabama? Why Birmingham? Why Alabama, period? This actually started back in 1956 when she needed a very serious spinal surgery. She had actually fallen 3 years previously and was getting to the point where she could barely walk. So they said, Mother, you need a surgery, and there's a 50-50 chance that you might, there's a 50-50 chance that you might not ever walk again. Now this really scared Mother. You know, she had her health. Now she did have bad health throughout her life, but she was able to walk. She was able to get around. And if this was taken away from her, she was really scared how she was going to do God's work. So they went on with the surgery. It actually was a fail halfway through the surgery. The doctor actually threw his instrument down and walked out because he had found something else that was wrong. And he really did not think Mother would ever walk again. So they had to call another surgeon in. But this actually, God proved them all wrong. She was able to walk again. And she made a bargain with God, though, during this really hard decision. And she said, Lord, if you allow me to walk again, I will build you a monastery in the South. Now, the reason being for the South is because during this time there was a lot of racial segregation going on. And Mother felt that the African American population needed hope and they needed prayers down here. So, since she was able to walk, she did need leg braces though, a back brace, and I think even an arm brace for a little while. But she didn't care, it was good enough for her, so she started to work on her end of the deal. So that's essentially what brought her down here to Birmingham in 1962. Now, this is when she had her first monastery built, and she traveled down with 4 other nuns. So there was only 5 of them in the beginning. Now, in
how did she raise the funds to get the monastery built?
For that part, I know a lot of it was through donations. Also, she started St. Peter's Fishing Wars, and oh gosh, what was the other? Peanuts, but what was the name of it? It just totally left me. I can't remember that, but yes, they actually sold Fishing Wars. Sold them to local fishermen, and people bought them. And of course they used the catchy name of St. Peter's Fishing Wars, and then peanuts. And they actually ordered in, I can't remember the name of it, it's going to drive me crazy, but they ordered in all these peanuts, a huge roaster, and they actually did this in the monastery, which is very, very rare. First of all, they're cloistered nuns. Nuns normally don't do this. But they would actually, during their work time, they would come in, they would cook them, roast them, then send them out to local football games, baseball games, whoever would buy them. And then the other thing, too, is Mother began giving spiritual talks. So she would actually be able to bring in some money. Now, Mother Angelica was always a cloistered nun, meaning she lived back behind that cloistered wall. But she was kind of more of a special case, if you want to say. She had special permission from the local bishop to be able to go out and to give all of these talks because people just loved hearing her. She had a way of just speaking with people and being real with them, and people craved for that. Now in 1978, Mother Angelica actually went up to Chicago to give one of these spiritual talks. And while she was up there, she was able to visit a small Baptist TV studio. Now you have to remember, she was a cloistered nun, so she had no idea what TVs were. She knew nothing about them. I think the first time she saw a television is when she came down to Alabama in the process of building her monastery, and I think the hotel actually had a TV. And she wondered what in the world this box was. She just couldn't understand it. But actually, while she was there, she was given a tour of the studio, and it kind of just blew her mind. The Holy Spirit opened up her mind, and she realized that through this tiny little box, she could take the Catholic faith out into the world. So while she was there, she actually looked up to heaven, and she said, "Lord, I got to have one of these." She was very, very determined. So she got in her mind that she wanted to start up a Catholic TV network, television station. Had no idea how she was going to do it, didn't have any money, but she didn't care. Now in 1981, she started up this television network with only $200 and a whole lot of faith. And she started this up down there in Birmingham, just in a small little garage. And this is EWTN, which stands for Eternal Word Television Network, which is still the largest religious and Catholic network in the world and going very, very strong today. Now in 1992, she started up her radio network, her shortwave radio, which is also located in the Birmingham area as well and going very strong. So we are very, very blessed, very, very grateful for what Mother Angelica, through the grace of God, what she's been able to do for us. Now, during the late 80s and the early 90s, Mother Angelica would actually take care of EWTN along with her sisters. But she actually began to worry about their way of life. She wanted to take them away from that hustle and bustle and focus more on that prayerful way of life which they were called to. So this is actually when she began looking for property in 1995. She wanted to build a monastery apart from EWTN. So she scouted out many different types of properties. She said nothing felt right until she stepped foot on the grounds here. She said she could really feel God's presence. She knew this is where God wanted her and her sisters to live. Now the acreage here is actually 380 acres. So when you were coming down the beginning of that white fence and then everything down here is everything Mother Angelica and the nuns own. Now this actually used to be an old soybean farm in the very beginning. So when you were coming in, you saw that huge white barn on your right-hand side. A part of that barn is actually a part of the barn from the original farm. Now just a step ahead, when Mother was building this between the years of 96 and 99, in 1998 she wanted to start up an order of brothers who were called the Knights of the Holy Eucharist, to simply just stay here, live on the ground, and help take care of the shrine. So they asked Mother, they said, "Well, where are we going to live? You're going to have this monastery and everything, but there's nothing else here." And she pointed to that little white barn and she said, "That's where you're going to live." And she wasn't kidding either. So that's actually where they began. Of course, over the years, you can tell they've extended on. Very, very beautiful over there. Own individual living quarters, kind of an entertainment area, which they are able to do, I think it's on Saturday nights. And huge kitchen, and also a very, very beautiful chapel. So actually visiting priests and visiting seminarians can come and stay there if they want to get away for a little while and kind of have a spiritual retreat. So in 1995 she purchased this. She knew she wanted to build a monastery and a small farm chapel. She really had no intentions of building anything so large, but obviously God had bigger plans for her. So in 1996, she took a trip to Bogota, Colombia, to publicize her new Spanish channel for EWTN. And while she was over there, there was a priest that invited her to visit a small chapel or a little small church dedicated to the El Divino Niño, or simply the Divine Child Jesus, when Jesus was about 6 or 7 years old. Mother agreed to go. She said it was very crowded though, So she was actually standing towards the side, and she was looking at the statue of the child Jesus. And she said while she was in prayer, the statue actually came alive to her, animated to her, turned to her and said in a child's voice, "Build me a temple, and I will help those who help you." And then he turned back around and became a statue again. Now, obviously, this doesn't happen every day. You know, whether this was just a vision that God allowed her to see through the divine child Jesus. But Mother was very emotional. She was very upset because Jesus was asking for a Catholic temple. Now, as Catholics, we normally do not call our churches temples. So she had no idea what Jesus was really wanting. So she came back here. 2 months later, she went over to Rome to visit the Pope at the time. And she said while she was leaving St. Peter's Basilica, she turned around and inscribed on the stone, it read, "This temple was built," and then it had the date. So of course Mother got very excited. Here's the home of our Catholic faith in Rome. They call it a temple. So she realized Jesus wanted that very special sacred spot just for himself. So she came back. That's when they really began building in 1996, eventually finishing at the end of 1999. And that's everything for the main church, the lower church, and the whole monastery, which you cannot actually see the monastery. That's directly behind the main church and surrounded by the cloistered wall. So that took 3.5 years to be built. And people ask, the main question is, how in the world did she pay for this? This was actually paid for by 5 families. Now, these families did not know one another. Mother did not know them personally. They happened to just come forward or call, write her, ask her if she was needing any money, working on any project. Of course she said yes, and they were willing to donate the money. But they did not want anybody to know any of their information and also how much money they were giving. So she knew they were truly doing this for the Lord and not for themselves. Now, everything else was added on later, the huge piazza area and the creche and the castle, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. This was added on towards the end of 2001, the beginning of 2002.